Let's dive in. You ever get that feeling that all the usual business talk,
Yeah.
the growth hacks, the quarterly reports, it just feels like it's missing something. Something, I don't know, deeper.
Oh, absolutely. Like there's another layer to it all that we don't often discuss in those terms.
Exactly. So today, we're definitely going beyond the usual balance sheets. We're looking into Christopher Stubbs' writings, specifically his ideas on divine sovereignty and the remnant economy as a business model.
Yeah, and what's really striking right off the bat is where Stubbs starts. He's not kicking off with market analysis or, VC funding rounds.
Right.
His whole framework begins with concepts like alignment and mission,
Mm.
but in a much broader sense than you typically hear.
So our mission for this deep dive then is to really try and get our heads around this alternative philosophy.
hmm To unpack its core ideas and, ask ourselves,
Mm.
does it actually offer a structure, a functional, scalable, maybe even principled structure for how we build things?
It feels like it's digging into the very foundations of what value even means, way beyond just profit, moving past the boardrooms, the brand decks.
Definitely. Towards this focus on alignment and, mission.
Okay, so Stubbs really throws down a gauntlet, doesn't he? He asks, essentially, what if the most powerful business model isn't about the suit and tie? What if it carries a mission?
It's a provocative caution, makes you step back from that relentless focus on, funnels and conversions that dominate so much business thinking.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's tackle a big one right away, scalability. Because that's often the first hurdle, right? How does a model built on mission actually grow?
Yeah, that's key. And it's fascinating how he kind of flips the script on traditional growth. He's not talking about market share in the usual way.
So no viral marketing loops.
Apparently not. He argues it scales through genuine alignment, through being, as he puts it, real, not through hype or trying to engineer virality. It's about coherence, shared values driving the expansion.
And he gives some pretty tangible examples of what this real offering looks like, doesn't he?
Oh.
Things like land, tools, systems, brotherhood, trade.
Very foundational stuff.
It feels almost primal compared to, say, launching the next big app.
It does. And his mechanisms for spread are just as unique. He talks about licensing, not franchising.
Okay, what's the distinction there, do you think?
Well, licensing often suggests sharing principles and brand, maybe, but with more local autonomy. Franchising is usually much more rigid, centrally controlled.
So more trust in the aligned individuals.
Seems like it. And then there's this idea of sacred trusts for things like merch or land leases that elevates the responsibility, doesn't it?
It really does. Stewardship over ownership, almost.
Yeah.
And that metaphor he uses, spreading like fire, not algorithms, that paints a picture.
It emphasizes something organic, person to person, driven by conviction, not just code.
Okay, so it scales differently. But what about its actual usefulness, its utility? Stubbs makes a pretty bold claim saying it's more useful than 99% of what's out there. That's quite a statement.
It is. And he backs it up by talking about delivering things like vocational clarity, finding your work's purpose, or real food, actual sustenance, purpose-driven labor.
Yeah, these aren't exactly the selling points you see on, Amazon's homepage.
Not at all. He seems to be suggesting that mainstream platforms, while convenient, might miss these deeper human needs.
So the utility isn't just transactional, it's transformational,
Yeah.
helping people make sense of their role, their work, their home, even their legacy.
Exactly. He talks about appealing to the soul and the soil. It's tapping into that desire for meaning, for connection, for something grounded, perhaps.
That definitely resonates in today's world. But okay, let's ground this a bit. Practicality. How does this actually work on the ground? Stubbs himself says it's not for everyone.
Right, he's quite clear on that. It's for the willing. And it's not presented as easy. He uses the metaphor of a forge, implying heat, pressure, shaping.
So refinement, not relaxation. What are the actual actions involved then?
He gets pretty specific there. Things like leasing land, actually starting co-ops, raising animals, creating the necessary contracts or agreements, upholding a shared code or set of principles.
Real hands-on stuff.
Very much so. And training others, passing on the skills. It requires active participation only if you do, he says. It's about craftsmanship, not just convenience.
Okay, so it demands commitment. And it's not just about sorting out your own household, is it? He talks about the individual house being a kind of prototype.
Yeah, that's a key point. The vision extends beyond just self-sufficiency for one family.
He actually mentions the potential to create wealth, meaning, work, and security for hundreds. That's a significant community-level impact he's envisioning.
It is, but it comes with a caution, doesn't it? He stresses humility if you stay humble.
Right, don't make yourself the idol.
Exactly. The goal isn't personal glory, but being a vessel, focusing on what he calls the way back home, not on building your own little kingdom. It's about service to a larger principle.
Which leads him to claim this is actually a superior business philosophy. That's a very strong word. Superior how?
His argument hinges on transformation. He says, flat out, it doesn't sell, it transforms. That's the core difference he's highlighting.
So moving beyond just exchanging goods for money.
Entirely. He actually redefines business terms. Sales become witness. Your actions speak for themselves. Marketing becomes testimony. Sharing your lived experience. Growth becomes discipleship. People joining because they believe in the way, not just the product.
Wow, that reframes everything. But he also mentions a significant cost.
Yes, giving up everything fake, which suggests it requires a deep level of authenticity and shedding, perhaps. Conventional ambitions or pretenses.
A high bar. And all this leads to what he calls the remnant economy, which emerges from this idea of divine sovereignty. Can you unpack that connection in these 6 core principles he lays out?
Sure. So the remnant economy is presented as the natural result, the fruit of operating under divine sovereignty. But crucially, he defines sovereignty not as like human rebellion or doing whatever you want, but as alignment with a pre-existing order. God's design, as he puts it. He uses that analogy of a blade of grass. It just follows its nature, its inherent law.
So sovereignty through obedience to a natural or divine order, not defiance.
Precisely. And the 6 principles then offer a kind of blueprint for embedding that alignment into practice.
Okay, let's quickly touch on those. First, that point about sovereignty as alignment, not rebellion, like the blade of grass. What's the takeaway there?
It's about working with the grain of reality as he perceives it, rather than fighting against it or trying to impose your own separate will onto everything. Understanding and harmonizing with foundational principles.
Got it. Second, the message is restored, not new. It's about remembrance, he says, not innovation. That feels countercultural.
It really does in our world obsessed with the next new thing. It implies there's a timeless wisdom we need to rediscover, not just constantly invent. A return to fundamentals.
Third, operating through nature, trade, and covenant. He calls things like grazing or land stewardship the technology of the divine. That's a powerful framing.
It is. It elevates these seemingly basic practical activities, working with the land respectfully, honest exchange between people, making and keeping serious agreements suggests these aren't just mundane, but are pathways to aligning with that higher order.
Principle 4. The remnant is known by action, not words. Known by your fruits. Very practical.
Yes, it emphasizes results and authenticity. Your actions and their outcomes are the proof, not just your stated beliefs. Walk the talk, essentially.
Fifth is maybe a bit more challenging. Not casting pearls to swine. He uses it to justify gatekeeping to protect what's seen as holy.
Right. This principle suggests a need for discernment. Protecting the integrity of the model, the community, the principles might mean not sharing it indiscriminately or allowing entry to those who might corrupt or misunderstand it. It's about stewardship of something valuable.
And the last one, number 6. Success is measured by transformation, not transaction. Even one household returning to this God-given order is seen as advancing the whole thing.
Exactly. It brings it back to that core idea. The ultimate metric isn't profit or scale in the conventional sense, but genuine, deep change in individuals and communities aligning with these core principles.
So wrapping this up, Stubbs is laying out a business model, or maybe a life philosophy expressed through business, that's fundamentally rooted in his concept of divine sovereignty.
Yeah, leading to this remnant economy.
It prioritizes mission, scales through genuine alignment, focuses on deep transformation. It's definitely a stark contrast to most of the business thinking you encounter day to day.
Absolutely. It challenges core assumptions about growth, value, purpose, success. It really pushes you to question what we're all building and why.
So maybe the final thought for you listening to this is, what does this stir up in you? Does this alternative way of thinking challenge your ideas about purpose, about business, about building value?
Does it resonate? Does it repel? And what might it actually mean in your own context to try and build something truly real, something lasting based on principles like these?
Definitely something to chew on long after we finish here.